Hello everyone, myself Dr. Veena RS, Associate Professor, Department of ISC, Dayanand Sagar Academy of Technology and Management, Bangalore. Welcome to the lecture video on Exception Handling and Lab Program 9 of Object-Oriented Programming with Java. Subject code BCS306A for third semester under VTU 2022 scheme. Let us see what Lab Program 9 statement goes about. Lab Program 9 statement says that develop a Java program to raise a custom exception, that is a user-defined exception for divide by zero using try, catch, throw, and finally. So before we write a Java program, let us first understand what is an exception, how you can handle the exception using a mechanism exception handling using the various keywords, and then we will write a Java program for the given statement. So what is an exception? So when we say exception, there is always a tendency for erroneous situations to occur either within a program or beyond it. So whenever you write a program, it is always possible that you have written some statement that leads to erroneous situations and that terminates the program without executing it successfully. Like you can say divide a number by zero. We all know that we cannot divide a number by zero. But during runtime, if you try to divide a number by zero, definitely it says that division by zero is not possible. And it terminates the program at that particular moment itself. The second one, you can also say there is no enough space in JVM heap to allocate memory for the same. So these are some of the examples for erroneous situations which can occur whenever the program is getting executed. So these kinds of erroneous situations are called as exceptions. So exceptions are such anomalous conditions which change the normal flow of execution of program. So just now, as I have told you, the program started executing. In between, it says that it has reached or it has raised to some erroneous situation, which will change the normal flow of execution of a program, and it will terminate the program, which can be also stated as abnormal termination of a program without executing it successfully. So those anomalous conditions are called as exceptions. And if the exception is not caught by the user, runtime system handles it in its own way. So if you have not handled it, the runtime system will handle it its own way. So what it will do is, whenever the runtime system handles any of these anomalous condition or erroneous situation or exception, it basically displays the error message in the console. That is what the description and that description or that error message is also called as the stack trace of exception, and it terminates the program. So if you have written a program which is absolutely error-free, you execute a program and let us say that you are trying to divide a number by zero, which is actual an erroneous situation, or you can say that it is anomalous condition. And that means there is an exception in the given program. So as you have not caught this exception, runtime system will handle it its own way. So what it will do, it will display the respective error message, what exactly that error message or a stack trace of exception is there, and it will terminate the program there itself. So just see the example program. I have just written a simple program which is trying to divide a number by another number. So here in public static void main method, I have declared two variables A and B, and the value of A is 10 and value of B is 0. And what we are doing here is just we are printing one message. Suppose exception program is one of the message which should be displayed. And after that, I am trying to divide a number A by B. So we all can see here in this example, the value of A is 10 and the value of B is 0. And I'm trying to divide these two numbers 10 by 0 and put it in a variable that is res result. And after division, it should display the result value with a message after division. So this is what we know, that this program is going to divide number 10 by 0. So I have not handled it. I have just written a program, and if you execute this program, you will see that the exception will occur and the runtime system will handle the given situation. So before going ahead, I'll just show you what will be the output of this program. So you can see here, the same program I have written here in public static void main, value of A is 10, value of B is 0. We have a result variable. We are trying to print the message that is exception program. We are trying to divide a number A by B, put it in the variable that is result, and result value should be printed on the screen. So if I run this program, you will see the output of program will be something like this. You can see the output here. This is what exception program message has come due to the system.out.print, which I have written in the program. And after that, as you are trying to divide a number by 0, and I have not caught that exception, I have not handled that exception, runtime system will handle it. And what it will do is, it will display the stack trace of that exception on the console, and it will exit the program there itself. And as it has exited, you can see that after result equal to a by b, I have added one more statement like system.out.print. This statement onwards, the rest of the program will not get executed. So what this console or what this stack trace talks about is, it also gives you the complete detail or description of that particular error. So what it says is, there is an exception in the thread main. That means in main method, there is an exception. And that exception is nothing but an arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception is from the package java.lang. And in arithmetic exception, what is the description of exception is divide by 0. And it will also show that this exception has occurred at what particular line number of which particular file. So it says that there is a class called as exception program. In that you have a method called as main. This method is in the program that is .java file exception program and the line number 17. So in line number 17, there is an exception which has led and which has handled by the runtime system, and it has displayed the respective message and it has terminated the program itself. This is actually how the exception, if you have not handled explicitly, it will handle it by itself. So I can say that the output of this program, if you execute, will be displayed something like this. So just now I have explained you, it will say that there is an exception in the main thread, and at what particular line number also it will display it. This is how basically the exception program goes on. If there is an erroneous condition or there is an anomalous condition, it actually stops the execution of the program in between itself. So what basically the exception hierarchy talks about is, on the top of the all classes, we know that object is a class which always acts as the top of the entire hierarchy. In this object class, there is a subclass called as throwable. So throwable is a subclass of object superclass, and which always throws the errors or exceptions, we say. So throwable has two various subclasses. One is exception and one is error. So error is something like which we cannot handle. It is beyond our scope, like Stack Overflow error, virtual machine error, out of memory error. So these are nothing but called as errors, and these errors we cannot handle explicitly in the program. But yes, if there are some erroneous situations which we can definitely handle it, those are called as exceptions. And there are two types of exceptions. One are checked exceptions and one are unchecked exceptions, checked and unchecked. So checked exceptions are basically the exceptions which occur during compile time. So these exceptions are also known as compile time exceptions. So the examples for checked exceptions are IO exception, SQL exception, or class not found exception. You people would have also come across the error message like class not found exception. You have not created a class and you are trying to create an object of that particular class. So while executing or while compilation only, the error will come that class not found exception. So such exception is called as checked exception, and which always occur during compile time. There is one more type of exception, which are unchecked exceptions, which can occur only during runtime. So we can say unchecked exceptions are runtime exceptions like divide by 0, array index out of bounds exception, and all those things. So arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, array index out of bounds or index out of bounds exception, array index out of bounds exception. These are all the classes which comes under unchecked exceptions, which can occur only during runtime. And if you don't handle it explicitly, runtime, that is system runtime, will handle it in its own way, which will terminate the program abnormally. So without even executing or without even terminating a program, we can still handle the exceptions. And that mechanism is called as exception handling. So we can definitely handle the exceptions which can occur during the runtime as well. That is unchecked exceptions. So there are 5 keywords which are available with us to handle the exception. And those 5 keywords are try, catch, finally, throw, and throws. So what do you mean by try? as a keyword. So try is a block. That means try keyword will be followed by the curly bracket start and curly bracket end. And in between this particular block, it always contains the code which we want to monitor it for an exception. So if I try to divide a number by 0, so you can say that division statement is the statement which we should monitor for an exception. So put that statement within try block. So whenever you are writing some statements within the try block and suppose it says it raises an exception, it automatically goes to the next keyword, that is catch. So catch is not a block, catch is basically a method, and catch method will always handles the respective exception. So you have to tell that is which exception and how it can handle it. So body of catch method will tell how to handle the exception which has been thrown by the try block. You have the keyword called as finally, in which that is again a block, and finally block will be executed irrespective of exception. Irrespective of exception in the sense, if there is an exception also, finally block is going to be executed, and if there is no exception also, the finally block is going to be executed, or will show the demonstration of the statements which is written in the finally block. You have the keyword called as throws. So sometimes what I want is I don't want to write it explicitly in the try block and the catch method I want to do it. I can just say that this is what a method I have written. And inside that method, if some of the exceptions are there, it should be able to throw those exceptions. So then in that case, we have to make use of throws keyword. So which will allow to throw an exception from the body of the method. And the last keyword we have is throw. So throw is a keyword which throws the custom exception. So there are some inbuilt exceptions as well, but I can create my own exception as well. If I want to create my own exception, I have to create a class which will act as an exception, and you have to create an object of that particular exception class. So whenever we say that this is called as a erroneous condition or erroneous situations, all those situations you can put it in one class and you can name it as an exception. That means you have to show that, or you have to inherit from the predefined class, that is exception. And this exception can be thrown explicitly or manually using throw as a keyword. So whenever erroneous situations we want to handle, that means you want to deal with exception handling mechanism, these 5 keywords plays a major role. Put all the statements which can raise to an exception in the try block. If there is an exception, it should be able to handle it in a catch block. Some of the statements, irrespective of exception, I want to deal with, use finally keyword. I want to throw an custom exception, that is user-defined exception, which system doesn't know about it. I can make use of throw as a keyword, and I don't want to write it explicitly. I want to write it that the entire method, if there is an exception, it should be able to throw. So you can make use of throws as a keyword. So these are the 5 various keywords which we can use it for handling exception. So I'll just write a program like in the previous slide, we have seen that, or this program, when we talk about, we say that this program. So we have seen that division by 0 is not possible. So it has terminated the program there itself, and the output has not, or the next of the statements did not get executed. So can I handle this exception? I know that there may be a problem with division part. So can I handle this particular exception? So the answer for such question is yes, I can handle it. So the same program I have written it here, that is exception program, where before dividing a number that is 10 by 0, I want to display an exception program, so I have just printed it. Now we know that result, whenever it is getting calculated by dividing A by B, it is possible that it may raise or it may throw division by 0 exception. So that statement I have written within the try block. So whatever the statement you write it in the try block, it is possible that if it raises an exception, it will be caught, and we can handle those exceptions. So if there is an exception, if there is no exception, no worries, it will simply carry on with the next of the statement's execution. So what I have written here is, I am trying to divide a number that is 10 by 0, and I have put that statement within the try block. And try block should be immediately followed by catch. It's a combination, that is try and catch. And catch is a method, that means it will be having the parenthesis, and we should be able to tell that which exception you want to handle it. So like division by 0 is an exception which comes under arithmetic exception. So I'm trying to catch which exception? Arithmetic exception. And arithmetic exception is a predefined class for which we have created an object named E. And if there is an exception, that is division by 0 or any arithmetic exception is there, it will enter into catch method and it will execute the statements written within the catch method. So what I have written in the catch method is system.out.print cannot divide a number by 0. I have written a statement explicitly, cannot divide a number by 0. And after that, suppose I say B value is automatically, or B value I want to set it to 1. So if you are trying to divide a number by 0, it should become 1. And after catch block, the next statement I have written as result equal to A by B. That means what is the new value of B now is 1, not 0. So the output of this program will be something like this. So what I have done, I have just added the try block. Inside try block, I am trying to divide a number, and we have made use of catch in which the value of B has become 1. And again, we are dividing a number and print the value after division. I'll run the program now. So you can see here, it has clearly shown first statement it has got printed. After that, it has told that cannot divide a number by 0 and the value of B should become 1. And 10 divided by 1 is 10. And that is as of type double. It is showing that after division, the value is 10.0. So this is how. So you can say that here we have handled the exception. Here we have handled the erroneous situation which has occurred during runtime. And if it occurs during runtime, do something like this. So that mechanism is called as exception handling. So the output of this, you can see that it will say cannot divide a number by 0 and after division value will get printed. So this is how we can handle the exceptions. So arithmetic exception, or suppose you have an array variable whose size is 10. And suppose you are trying to assign the value to the 11th one, that is 11th index. So it always throws an exception called as array index out of bounds exception. So you can catch that also. So you can say that if there is an array index out of bounds exception, how it works or what it should do. So all those exceptions, you can catch it in the catch method and you can work on that. And those statements should be thrown during or inside the try block. So this is how the inbuilt exception works. So now, before going to lab program 9, I would also like to tell you that if you want to create your own exception, you want to create your own custom exception or user-defined exception. So how do you create is, it's very simple. You have to create a class with some particular name, with whatever name you want to create an exception. And after that, just use the keyword that is extends followed by exception. So what do you mean by, suppose in lab program 9 also I have created a custom exception called as division by 0 exception and followed by extends exception. That means what? I am trying to create an exception with what name? Division by 0 exception. So the moment you write extends exception, the class name can act as an exception and you can throw the object of that class whenever the erroneous situation is reached and you want to handle that one. So like this, you now lab program 9, what it talks about is you have to create a division by 0 custom exception and you have to demonstrate it. So what I have done is I have created first the class for an exception. What is the name of exception I want to create name with is division by 0 exception. As it has to be exception, I have written the keyword extends. It should be extended. That means there should be inheritance from which parent? That is exception class. So you can say that now division by 0 exception is going to act as a custom exception or user-defined exception. So what is written within this class is I have just defined one constructor, a division by 0, and I have put some message. So whatever message I pass it in the constructor while creating an object, that message should be displayed on the screen. Because we know that whenever the exception occurs, the exception will have its own description. And that description is nothing but the stack trace of that exception. And that is called as the exception inbuilt constructor with string value. So here what I have done is the moment you create an object of division by 0 exception by passing some message, that message is calling a superclass constructor. So you are passing a message to the superclass constructor that is an exception class and it will display that particular message based on the statement or based on the how you are handling it. We are trying to create one class with the name custom exception example, and we say we have a main method written that. And now what we want is we'll try to divide a number by 0, and if division by 0 happens, it should be able to call the custom exception, not the inbuilt exception. So what I have written here, I have just put everything into the try. So if any of the statement is actually with respect to the exception, it should be able to throw it. So inside try block, I have created or I have defined two variables, numerator and denominator. As it is division by 0, denominator I have put it as 0. And before I start dividing a numerator by denominator, I can explicitly check whether the denominator is 0 or not. So I have just written a statement, if denominator equal to 0, that means division should not be possible. That means it should be called as an exception and I want to handle it. So I have already created an exception with the name division by 0 exception. So I can just use that. So how do you call that a custom exception, or how do you raise that particular custom exception is, if the denominator is equal to 0, you will say throw. That means I want to throw. What do you mean by new? Create an instance of a class. Which class? Division by 0 exception. Division by 0 exception. And what is the message I have passed is division by 0 is not allowed. So the moment I pass this string value, that is division by 0 is not allowed, this will act as a message, which is nothing but a string message in this constructor, which is going to pass this message and call the superclass constructor. And it will display, instead of saying slash that is division by 0, it will just say that division by 0 is not allowed. So here you can say that new division by 0 exception is creating an anonymous object. Anonymous object in the sense we have not given a name to the object, but I'm just trying to create an anonymous object and throw it. Because anyway, I don't want, or I know that the object name is not going to be used later. So I have just thrown an anonymous object over here. So this is how you have written a throw statement. And if denominator is not 0, then it should be able to divide numerator by 0, numerator by denominator, and it will print the result. So this is how you have written. And after try block, you have closed the try block here after result is equal to result printed. And after try block, it should be immediately having either the catch or finally. There is a rule, you cannot have only the try block without catch or finally. Either you should have a catch method or you should have finally block followed, that is followed from try block. And in catch, you can see here, the name of an exception, I have written it as what? Division by 0 exception. And division by 0 exception we have created here. So that particular object I have raised here, and it is going to display the error message like this. It says caught the custom exception, and it will display the message. Get message is a predefined method for any particular object of type exception, which will display the message. That is, whatever message is given to the superclass constructor will be displayed on the screen. And you can also have multiple catches in the followed from the try block, one try block followed by multiple catch methods. So I am also writing arithmetic exception. So suppose it is not catching division by 0 exception, then it will search for arithmetic exception. But now in this example, definitely it will take a division by 0 exception because you have thrown it explicitly here. So here you can say the keyword what you have used throw is used to throw an user-defined exception or custom exception. And we have also written finally block. So finally block, what it says that finally block executed message has come. And then we will just close the program. So this is what we have closed the main program also. So again, to summarize this entire program, you have created one custom exception with the name division by 0. And to call it as custom exception, you have extended it from exception class. Whenever the object of that class is being thrown, that says that it is an exception to be thrown, which will be caught by the catch method. And when that exception should be thrown, we have written a statement, and that statement should be written within the try block. And after that, finally, also you have written finally block executed. So even if there is an error or no error, it should be able to display the statements written or execute the statements written in the finally block. So I'll take you to IntelliJ IDE to execute this lab program 9. I already copied this program. Here you can see we have created one class named division by zero exception, which is extended from exception. And I'm just defining one constructor by passing some user-defined message, which should act as an exception message to be printed. And in the main method, we have put all the statements in the try block to monitor for the exceptions. And if there is an error, we will be able to catch those using these statements. So this is how we have seen the program. Let us execute it. You can see here. What is the error message we have got is caught custom exception. This is the message, caught custom exception. And there you have written e.get message. What is meant by e.get message? It is going to display the message which you have passed it. So what is the message you have passed is this? Division by zero is not allowed. And after that, actually, it should stop the execution or it should continue. Is definitely it will continue because you have handled it using try and catch. And you have also written the finally block. So finally block also will get executed. And what is the statement we have written in the finally block is finally block executed message to be printed. So these two lines have got printed as an output for this program. So suppose I say I'll just change the value denominator from 0 to 10. So we can say that there is no exception now. We will see what will be the output of the program. You can see here the result is equal to 1. So here what we have done, we have given a denominator value as 10 and we are checking denominator if it is equal to 0 or not. And if it is 0, then only it should be able to throw the custom exception. Otherwise, it should not enter into the if block. It should come out of if block and it should say that numerator should be divided by denominator and the result should be printed. Also remember one thing, whenever you are making use of try and catch blocks or try block and catch method, so moment it throws an error, it goes to the respective catch and the execution starts or continues from that particular catch method itself. It will not go back to the try block. So this is how the lab program 9 executes. I hope all of you understood this program and learned exception handling as well and how to create the custom exception or user-defined exception as well. So thank you all. In the next lecture video, we will see lab program 10. Thank you. Thank you.